Hello, everyone. This is Jacek Spendel, President of Liberty International. I'm very pleased to open this another public Zoom session we are holding at Liberty International. Today is November 16, 2020. I don't want to say good evening or good morning. We are in a very different places in the world. Actually, I am in the Republic of Turkey right now. It's 9 p.m. here, and basically most of our guests are in Nigeria, where there is 7 p.m. One of our guests is in state of Maryland, which is Eastern time in the United States, I believe 1 p.m. So I'm very, very pleased to start this next meeting. We had a little break since the previous one, which was in September. Last time we talked with Maria, who was a political fighter, freedom fighter in Belarus. Belarus is still struggling for liberty, and we see protests basically every day. And it's amazing because these guys are doing it since August. We are having November right now, but I think they are getting closer. It's just a long, long run. But struggle for freedom doesn't happen only in Belarus these days. The world is extremely messy and full of events. In some places, it goes towards more government, especially that in current environment of COVID-19 and restrictions connected to it. This is just a climate for government to grow, right? Unfortunately, it is in many places. However, many people don't want to accept government growth, and especially when it's linked to brutality, aggression, and just naked power grab. One of these countries is the largest country in Africa. It is Nigeria. In Nigeria, we are experiencing big crisis, and is a social shakeup. We see thousands and thousands, hundreds of thousands, I believe, of people protesting extensively in last weeks. This is probably at least a month right now. They protest against something called SARS. And I have a great experts here to tell you more about this. Today we will talk about Nigeria. Why does this country experience crisis? What are the roots of this crisis, and what are the possible pathways? This wonderful country of wonderful people. I know many Nigerians myself, including my very, very good friend, Adedeji Akintayo, who is living in Canada. I know many of them, and it's a very dear country to me, and I believe to many, many people, because what's happening in Nigeria always reflects what is happening in entire continent of Africa, and Africa matters very, very much. So before we get into the clue of this discussion and I start introductions, I want to welcome everyone, because this is public, and I'm happy to see growing numbers of participants who are joining here on Zoom. Today we are having a little bit of problem with Facebook. I guess Facebook is becoming more and more problematic in the different dimensions, but just hope it's just today. So there's no stream on Facebook. However, we will present this video later on YouTube. So it will be recorded and memorized. This is basically recorded. You should all know that. This is one of their public Zoom calls. So one part, basically more or less half of today's meeting is a discussion between the panelists. I try to give the topics. I try not to talk too much during this, but this is basically deeper introduction. And then in the second half of the meeting, we open it to the floor, as they say in the United States. So basically for questions and answers. So I want to tell you a little bit about Liberty International, which is the organization that I'm privileged to be president of. Liberty International is basically the oldest libertarian organization of which has the international international character of its activities. So among these international organizations and libertarians, same time, we are the oldest. We were started back in 1969 under different names, Society for Libertarian Society. And then we changed names again because there were fusions. For a very long time, we were called ISIL, International Society for Individual Liberty. Many of you can remember us as ISIL. The latest rebranding from a few years ago made us now what we are now, which is Liberty International, and we basically do education for freedom, for libertarian ideals. We don't do politics, but we do have ideas and a very strong core. And we have partners all around the planet, mostly in the developing world. We organize projects like Liberty Camps, the world conferences that happens almost every year. Sometimes when there's problem like COVID, we have a skipped year, but most of these years since 1982, we organized ISIL, or now Liberty International World Conference, which is beautiful gathering of freedom fighters, freedom lovers from all over the world. And not only academics, but also entrepreneurs, students, very different groups of people concerned about liberty. So a little bit about myself. I am from Poland, but I split my time between Poland, where I spend most of the year, and United States, to be precise, the beautiful state of Arizona, where under Liberty International auspices, we organize so-called Project Arizona, which I recommend everyone to look up. It's a wonderful project for students who come from all over the planet to learn about freedom and to become stronger leaders for liberty, because in Arizona, the freedom market is very good. Strong institutions guarding and defending liberty, big networks, lots of good friends. I see some names of some of them here. Welcome, guys. I'm happy to see you here. This winter, first time we'll turn online for Project Arizona. Is a huge pity, but you know, COVID restrictions, no traveling, no flights, crazy times basically. So I'm also running a think tank in Poland called Freedom Entrepreneurship Foundation. I just want to tell you about the newest movie we released last month. It's called Human Action, and it's a movie about life and legacy of Ludwig von Mises, which was the strongest personality, for sure, the most known representative of the Austrian School of Economics, the wonderful and great Austrian School of Economics. So look up Human Action. It's a full documentary movie. It's on YouTube. It's free of charge, and the newest production of my Polish think tank, Freedom and Entrepreneurship Foundation. I'm having great time with Liberty International, and these Zoom talks that I try to do every month, sometimes it's every 2 months, are one of the sources of joy. And I hope we are adding, I know we are adding another a layer for the big building, beautiful building of liberty. And we want to defend and actually advance freedom in every country in the world. So today, Nigeria. I want to introduce panelists first. And we have two of them being main panelists for today's topic. Plus, we have Roland Kingsley, who is our newest representative of Liberty International. I will start though with JJ Omojuwa. JJ Omojuwa is our keynote speaker, you could say, for today. One moment, I'm just putting his bio in front of myself. So JJ Popular Omojuwa is a Nigerian blogger, political commentator, and social media expert. The founder and chief strategist at The Alpha Reach, one of Nigeria's foremost digital media companies. He's the convener of the Conversations on Democracy and Development, CODED, with CODED 2019, one of the most talked about conferences in Africa in 2019. His book, Digital, The New Code of Wealth, broke social media and sales records in its fourth month of release. JJ Omojuwa is on the board of several companies and organizations, including the Convention on Business Integrity, CBI, the Kashim Ibrahim Fellowship, Nigeria's foremost fellowship program founded by the Kaduna state government. He was a guest lecturer at the Freie Universität in Berlin, which is Free University, where he lectured on the impact of new media on civil disobedience, very libertarian. He's a regular delegate at the Halifax International Security Forum, Nova Scotia in Canada. Omojuwa is often listed among Africa's most influential people by reputable organizations and media houses. He has been featured on local international media, TV, radio, and magazines. He is a King's College, Lagos old boy, a graduate of agricultural economics from Nigerian's renowned University of Agriculture, Abeokuta, UNAAB. But he is currently pursuing a Master of Science in Behavior Change at the Faculty of Brain Sciences in University College in London, having won the UK's government scholarship for that purchase. Congratulations, JJ.
Thank you.
Yes, so JJ Omojuwa, and now I will introduce you to my good friend, Ibrahim Anoba. Ibrahim Anoba is actually right now in Maryland, in the United States, but he's an editor of AfricanLiberty.org, which is Africa's premier platform for advancing individual freedom and economic prosperity. He is an expert in the African political economy with interest in African history and philosophy. He has extensively written on the effects of central planning in contemporary Africa and the dynamics of development economics using current issues. Some of his opinions have been featured in reports by Transparency International, Eurasia Review, and Christian Michelsen Institute. His works have also appeared in Yahoo News, The Africa Report, Business Insider, Gazeta de Provo, The Lead, The Daily Caller, and dozen other major outlets. He's alumnus of the Cato Institute, the Charles Koch Institute, and the Competitive Enterprise Institute. Welcome, Ibrahim. Ibrahim, do you hear us?
Yes, I do. Thank you for that introduction, Jacek.
Thank you. I was happy to meet Ibrahim in person in 2016 when he was at CEI, Competitive Enterprise Institute. And now very briefly about Roland Kingsley. And he is a recent graduate from African Center for Development and Strategy Development, also Atlas Network Academy alumni. Presently, which is very important for us at Liberty International, he's our West African representative in the country of Nigeria. Kingsley Roland has worked with African Students for Liberty organization on liberty development in Africa. He served as national coordinator to Sierra Leone and past regional coordinator expansion and recruitment for West Africa. Mr. Roland also served at Model United Nations Council, where he represented the UN Women Committee and represented the Cooperative People Republic of Guyana. Roland served as a former Zone Youth Coordinator of Civil Society Coalition on Sustainable Development Goals. He's presently working with an international organization in the United States. The name is Kids for Bees. And actually, we did project together already. Liberty International with Kids for Bees went great. We're gonna do more. He's pioneering development of business enterprise education for young African high school students. Guys, you have an impressive bios. I feel small, but this is awesome. We have a really strong brains. That also a signal for me that it's time to switch to you guys, so you can share your wisdom with us. Once again, we are live. Welcome everyone who joined later. This is Liberty International Zoom meeting about the crisis in Nigeria, police brutality and abuse in Nigeria. So guys, I want to ask you, and maybe one of you who feels who feels first ready to talk on can start. I want to ask about the roots of this current crisis, because every crisis has a root, right? It didn't just came from heaven, from nowhere. Who can say out of you guys what are the roots? About what's happening in your country?
I mean, I think it's rooted in police brutality generally, and that it also intersects the general bad governance and corruption and misappropriation that's gone on in Nigeria for so long. But with respect to NSAS, the specific crisis that we're talking about, it's rooted in several years of the police getting away with murder, literally getting away with brutality. And these campaigns have been going on for quite a while, at least 4 years. People have been asking the government that they needed to end this particular the particular department of the police, which is the Special Anti-Robbery Squad. They were designed to fight armed robbery, and this one of the strategies of the unit is that they don't wear uniforms. They can wear their mufti, they can be disguised, and they go strictly for armed robbers. But over the years, they started to abuse their powers and started to just malign and beat up and abuse the rights of regular citizens on the streets. They would organize raids and literally just park people out there on the road and take them. Sometimes people have been left in jail just for being unfortunate enough to be out in some place at the time when the police was carrying out this raid. So there's been this NSAS for several years. Nothing really happened. The government said they had done it at least 3 times, but nothing actually happened. And last month, it happened again in Delta, in the Niger Delta region of Nigeria, where SARS did this thing again. Meanwhile, this time around, a lot of people were angry. The COVID-19 had such a lot of impact on people's ability to earn income. Most people were more often than not at home. The conversation became bigger. Then the major difference this time around was that Nigeria's cultural leaders, the musicians, the actors and the actresses, they added their voices to this. So what was a regular conversation then became a viral conversation. And ultimately, one of them said, look, Thursday is Thursday. I'm coming out on Thursday, the 8th of October. If you're down, step out with me. And he did actually went out on the 8th of October in the Lekki area of Lagos. Lekki is like the highbrow area of Lagos. And people stepped out, and then really that's what started it. Eventually, more people came out in other parts of Lagos, the capital city of Lagos, Ikeja. Eventually, it spread across the country, and it was a peaceful protest. And eventually, the president came out to say, okay, we've heard you, we will end SARS, but the president wasn't trusted at that point because they had said the same thing in 2016, in 2017, in 2019. So people felt, well, we've heard this song before. There's nothing different to that. So they stayed out there and insisted, and then they released a document. The government then released a document of 5 things they intended to do with respect to the police. And then the protesters released a counter document. Basically, the government's document was 5 points. So the protesters released a counter document that was also 5 points, which they called 5 for 5. And they're basically talking about how the government needed to prosecute police officers that have been found wanting with respect to human rights abuses. The government needed to compensate families. The government needed to improve the welfare of the police, general police reforms and the likes. And then ultimately, we got to that point where the Nigerian system, as many people would know, is not used to citizens being that powerful or expressing their rights and their power in the way that NSAS did. So after 12 days, there was element of people that were supportive of the government using thugs to attack the protesters. And after that, national security more or less just broke down, and it was just looting all over the place. But I have to say clearly, the protests were peaceful. Things changed when people started to introduce thuggery to attack protesters who initially had to protect themselves. before things went out of hand, and then curfews were declared in Lagos and other parts of the country.
Thank you. Thank you, JJ. It
My
tells
pleasure.
a lot about how it all spurred and how brutal it is, and how deep the SARS section of police, how deeply they changed the Nigerian society and harmed it. I have a question to Ibrahim, which is about social and economic system in Nigeria. Many of us who are here attendees at this meeting today don't know very well what is the social and economic system in Nigeria. Is it more capitalistic? Is it mixed economy? Or maybe there is a big welfare state? Ibrahim, can you tell us a bit more? What is Nigeria all about in this aspect?
Thank you for that question, Jacek. And first, I want to say, Japheth, you really gave a strong background of the whole problem in Nigeria. So I think the only thing I will add to that is that, and which of course leads to your question about the economic situation, is that this problem is actually in many, many ways triggered by the economic situation that of course has been in play the last 6 months before the protest started. And which of course was exacerbated by the hardship of the lockdown from COVID-19. But COVID-19 wasn't the only economic trigger of the protest. As a matter of fact, in Nigeria presently, the unemployment rate is about 27%. So if you have an unemployment rate of 27%, and the poverty rate, of course, famously, is about 40%, 40.1%. So both unemployment rate and an increase in poverty rate, mind you, that unemployment rate is the highest we've had in record. So both problems, both economic problems, combined with the lockdown, really brought out the underlying resentment in Nigerians, and the NSARS, or the brutality of the SARS squad of the police, as JJ pointed out, only brought it out into the public, only brought out those anger, those reservations against how the government has managed the economy for at least in the last one decade to four. So it's not really about police brutality alone. There are millions of economic problems that contributed to these protests. And besides that, I think a very key aspect of the metamorphosis of the NSARS brutality is the moment when the international call for Nigeria to clamp down on internet fraud or cybercrime intensified. So of course, as JJ pointed out rightly, the SARS squad were primarily created to address robbery. But in the last 7 years, robbery in Nigeria has been majorly, from the aspect of international media, aligned with internet fraud. So that alignment, in many, many ways, gave the SARS operatives the, I don't want to say, maybe de facto right to look into robbery being perpetrated online. And, one of the, perhaps the primary, I don't want to be controversial here, the primary, maybe alleged culprit perpetrating these crimes are young Nigerian males. And oftentimes we connote them as individuals that are too young for the wealth they possess. And many of us have been victims of that, being hardworking and having an iPhone or driving a good car, and you're gonna get stopped by the SARS operatives because they will tell you that the reason why they stop you is because they want to stop robbery, which of course is now associated with internet fraud. So that moment when the international outcry for Nigeria to clamp down on internet fraud, or Yahoo, as we call them locally, intensified, was a major turning point for SaaS operatives to not only focus on conventional means or conventional robbery mode, but now metamorphosing into pursuing robbery online. And unfortunately, those that we associate with robbery online are young male that are too young to possess the wealth they control. So I think those are some economic dimensions to this protest as I first laid out, and of course this change from pursuing conventional robberies to pursuing internet fraud.
Thank you. Before we get to the next questions and further discussion, I want to tell you that we finally successfully are streaming on Facebook. So welcome, hello Facebook, great to have you. I want to thank Mandy, our administrator, who made it possible. So you are more than welcome to submit questions through Facebook in the comments, but the same applies to Zoom. It's easy to just find this ask a question button on Zoom. Please deliver them to us, and I will be getting them through our administrator, and soon, maybe in around 10 minutes, we're gonna start asking these questions in the order that they came, as many as possible. So I want to throw an issue. When I was in Ternopil in Ukraine 7 years ago, invited by my dear friend Adedeji for African Youth Forum. Actually, it's maybe surprising for many people, but in this small city in Western Ukraine, there were hundreds of African students, mostly from Nigeria, actually, also Cameroon, Ghana, and they self-organized pretty well. They had this forum. I spoke on the charity and aid, how destructive it might be in the long term, how bad it can be for economy, for incentives. So that's one aspect that we can also discuss today. But something that struck me very much was when I talked to young individuals, very nice people, by the way, very nice people, asking them about what do they want to do in their future, what the best career they can imagine could be. They often said, and nothing against them, I'm sure they were sincere, they were often saying, I want to be a politician. And I asked, why politician? And it was not about philosophy, it was, they were saying the politicians are the most powerful people. They make the real decisions in economy, in business, in society, basically. So don't you think the strong position of bureaucrats, politicians, and the fact that they control so much in places like Nigeria, this is connected to foreign aid, obviously, but not only. Do you think that this plays important role in this entire crisis that we face? Or maybe that's not the most important element. JJ, maybe you want to talk about this?
I mean, there's no surprise to that, because even if when I was growing up until today, when you ask people, what do you want to be? They often mention, I want to be president, I want to be senator. And, because they are children, when you ask them why, they could say stuff like, so I can buy a car for my mom, I can build a house for my dad. It's because it comes from the perception, and the perception is genuine, that government allows you access to the commonwealth that you use for your own personal good. And government through the years have not government. People in government through the years have not shown that to not be true, because you see people go into government with, the biggest earners in Nigeria are the lawmakers, right? And even though what they earn currently is humongous, it's unacceptable, they also find a way to even earn more through, they use their oversight powers over government ministries to get contracts, which really is illegal or should be illegal. They abuse their powers to access opportunities in government when, in some other people's cases, they are not directly stealing from the public purse. And when people see politicians, or their perception of a politician is someone who is rich, and even though it's not often outrightly said, is the understanding that they made off from the Commonwealth. So what needs to happen is, it's not even going to be enough to have civic education that helps people to understand that you don't have to be a politician to build your own wealth. You don't have to be a politician to thrive. You can thrive off your mental ability, your ability to apply yourself, to create wealth, to create goods and services that other people can explore. That won't be enough, especially in places like Nigeria, as long as people continue to see that once people get into government, they become stupendously rich.
Right. I mean, if I may add a little bit to what JJ said, I mean, it's absolutely right. Politics has a lot to do with this problem. And because Nigerians are in the streets this time around doesn't mean we've never had, our problems were never rooted in political or politicking or political games. I think the respected Professor Lumumba once said the day Nigeria realize its situation, or Nigerians arise against their government to call for proper democracies, the day Africa will emerge. And even Nelson Mandela echoed that, you know, Nigerians are often intolerant of what their politicians have done to them. And, you know, they just seem to be able to cope with anything. And I certainly think politicking, or the absurdity of the politics we've had since 1960s, is centered to this problem, particularly because this problem, this NSAS, wouldn't have, I frankly believe it wouldn't have happened if, you know, there hasn't been a major gross mismanagement of the Commonwealth, as JJ said. And it's just so unbelievable to see the figures, especially if you're doing a little bit of modern economic history of Nigeria, to see the figures of wealth created in the country in comparison to the figures of money in the hands of Nigerians. The disparity is so enormous. And if there has been such a gross mismanagement of the Commonwealth, I certainly do not think we should expect less from the people rather than to take to the streets. The history of revolution from 1791, when the first Africans in the diaspora rose against the French in the plantation in Saint-Domingue, was about, you know, partly about mistreatment, but also about the Blacks creating wealth in Saint-Domingue, now Haiti, not being able to take some of those wealth. The Russian Revolution, perhaps the biggest event of the 20th century, was because you know the Russians fell, or the Bolsheviks and the others. Even if we might not agree with them, they felt the wealth, it doesn't represent the economic reality on the ground. The Arab uprising was triggered by the economic absurdity created by Ben Ali in Tunisia, and all this. They always have some economic dimension to them. The politicians been managing the Commonwealth. And I also think the other side where I will blame government is the outcome, or the outcome or output of this so-called protest. So one of the major things that have happened since the Lekki massacre, which of course is perhaps the most significant event of the whole protest, was that the government feel the need to attack our medium of freedom of expression. The social media was being suggested to undergo some monitoring or censorship. In simple language, banning of the social media in some regard. And, you know, in that regard, also delegitimizing protests. And we also saw the federal government fining some media outlets that carried these protests without being biased towards the government. So it's not just only an economic absurdity that have been instituted in Nigeria since 1960, but also from the part of the politicians, though, but also some other non-economic dimensions of oppression that has been, you know, inflicted on us, which of course triggered that bad side of Nigerians to go into the streets and protest, and of course the aftermath of it, politicians now trying to censor the social media so they can avert future protests of that magnitude. So of course I will agree with JJ. Politicians are central to this problem, and I will place, if not close to 80% of the blame on them.
So you mentioned that politicians are censoring now social media and basically people who protest. However, a few days ago, it was announced that this SARS squad is being finished, or it's being dismissed. But now they are starting a new formation that actually will employ all the people who used to work for SARS, and people are legitimately angry, right? Because this is just rebranding. Just changing names doesn't cure the problem. What's gonna happen? What do you think, both of you? Are we gonna see more protests and more clashes on the streets? Are we gonna see the protests going slower now? Do you have any predictions about where this is all going to?
I think that we were unlikely to see protests in the immediate, but I wouldn't be surprised if, on account of what has happened this year, we see protests next year or some other year in the future that you can trace to this moment. Now, there are about 28 states of Nigeria's 36 subnationals have set up judicial commissions to listen to the claims of human rights abuses against SAS officers and other related matters. And I think that those will help assuage some people's fears that the SAS officers have gotten away with the crime. It, of course, does not help that government, as we speak, continues to clamp down on protesters. The central bank has locked people's accounts. Some protesters were picked up in their houses and arrested. We're unlikely to see protests, certainly not in the size of what we saw in October. The reason is because, especially in Nigeria, it takes a while. It takes a lot of pushing, a lot of grinding, a lot of things piling up to get Nigerians to come out in the way that they came out last month. So I don't expect, there probably will be protests here and there for this and that, but protests the size of NSAS, I'd be surprised if we get one again this year. And the reason is also because the pushback from government has been immense. A lot of people are demoralized. A lot of people are shocked. They are sad. They are disappointed. They are looking for a way out that is not being expressed through wanting to protest, e.g., leave the country via immigration, go get opportunities elsewhere. It will take a while for people to come back to that point where they feel like maybe going to protest is the next step again. But at the moment, even minus the protest, things are happening. A lot of people are meeting and having conversations about what roles they want to play. Nigeria's election are in 2023, and I know that a lot of people are thinking about what they need to do. There's a lot of conversation around getting your voter's card. Of course, without a voter's card in Nigeria, you do not vote. So getting your voter's card. Today, for instance, there was a big conversation on people rejecting the two major political parties, the PDP and the APC. Some said that they are like SARS and SWAT. There's no difference, the PDP and the APC. So apart from protesting, there will be a lot of outcomes and consequences of what has happened this year that will, for me, I think will culminate in what happens during the 2023 elections in Nigeria.
Right.
Thank you.
If I may add to that, Jacek, I think JJ is absolutely right. I mean, if you go by the trend of the body language of the politicians, of the government, they really were shaking. And if you have somebody like General Buhari in office and the other generals, who of course are now politicians in disguise, it's going to be so hard for them to allow a second phase or a second wave of such enormous protest. So it's going to be unlikely that we will see a protest of such magnitude in Nigeria, at least in the next 1 year. But if you go by the history of the black people in this world, it will point you to the direction of expecting a protest in Nigeria in the next 5 years. And I say this because you look at the trend at least in the last decade, we've seen, and I'm going to try to hold a much Pan-African view of this. I don't think this problem is only a problem in Nigeria, even if it's rooted in or way linked to police brutality or NSAS. It's a very Pan-African problem. Never before since the 1960s, the coups and the counter coups of the 1960s, have you seen have we seen rather, this enormous uprising among Africans everywhere. I mean, there were protests in the United States recently about uh, individual rights, particularly recognizing the rights of Africans, so-called minority Africans. Uh, in in Mali, there were protests after the elections, not necessarily about elections, but the fact that the government have marginalized a lot of people in Mali. The same marginalization problem in Cameroon that led to protests in Cameroon. The same problem in Ethiopia when the marginalized Tigrayan people are protesting their rights to against the government's marginalization. The same protest in Uganda where Bobby Wine and the Power People movements are calling for the recognition of their rights and proper democratization in Uganda, and of course for Yoweri Museveni, who have been in power for God knows, I think it's 1986 to go. The same problem in Tanzania, John Magufuli, although he recently won an election, people still want him to go. The same problem in Sudan last year when the Sudanese took to the street and you saw young Africans, young females, significantly, young female African Sudanese spearheading the protests. So that tells you that there seems to be a correlation among Africans everywhere about now standing up against fascist governments in Africa, now standing up against institutions, the United States of America, that do not recognize the rights of Africans. And I would think that in many ways, the NSAS protest was in many ways triggered by the Black Lives Matter protest in the United States. And the Black Lives Matter protest was in many ways triggered by the Sudanese protest last year. I was in one of the protests we held in DC at the Nigerian embassy against NSAS. And I would say roughly 20% of the people that were in protest with us were not Nigerians, they were African Americans. And this, of course, goes back to the issue of Africans, where anything that happens on the continent of Africa always resonates amongst the African diaspora and vice versa. Africa wouldn't have attained its independence if it wasn't for the contribution of Africans in the Caribbean, in New York, and everywhere, who supported our struggle. And of course, our nationalists were mainly supported by Africans in the diaspora like Du Bois and John Padmore, and Marcus Garvey. So what I'm saying in essence is that, considering the interconnection, the Pan-African interconnection of the African people in the 21st century, we are more connected than ever through music, through movies. I mean, I think JJ was saying, the celebrities in Nigeria were actually driving force for the during this NSAS protest, not because they want to. I don't want to go to Russia, but not because necessarily they want to come out, but because if they do not come out, the African American counterparts, the ones they feature in their music, will call them out. So there seems to be a very interesting Pan-African connection here, where one problem affecting Africans in the diaspora or in Nigeria will resonate across the continent and elsewhere. So in that light, I would say if we continue to see protests in East Africa, particularly Uganda and Tanzania, I would not rule out a protest in Nigeria in the next 5 years of such magnitude.
That's really interesting. All these connections you mentioned and different dynamics in very different countries, but there are some underlying common elements. Roland, I didn't forget about you. It's just different moment I ask you to do this. And this is basically the time after Roland speaks. I will open the discussion for questions from the audience. Roland, can you make a brief introduction of something we formed quite recently, Liberty International West Africa chapter?
Yeah, good evening, everyone. Thank you very much, Japheth and Anoba, for your presence. I feel very honored to join in this session to discuss about the recent happening in Nigeria. Also, Liberty International, the West African chapter, being headed by myself and a friend, Stanley Johnson, to look at opportunities for young Africans to share in the ideas of liberty. So far, we've been having some kind of in-house discussion about opportunities and privileges of promoting the idea of libertarianism in Nigeria and also Africa. started this journey. And one of such is having you here on this platform to discuss about the answers and what really transpired in between and all that. So we've really had time to, hit on some other thing like the project we had recently also that about the high school project on Kids for This and also sharing the ideas of capitalism and enterprise development. So it's been an amazing session. It's been an amazing journey so far, and we look forward to reaching out and then also working together to see how we could, develop Africa and then share the idea equally as well. Also, so that's just how far we've gone. And so thank you very much for this session. I'm also enjoying the discussion, being that I was part of the persons that actually pushed for the protest in Port Harcourt, the River State, Australia, and we saw a lot of issues here. And it's been an amazing thing because we are told to be very careful so that the police don't pick you up. Some persons have been harassed. Just a day after, we saw some person that was picked up by the police and all that. But we are not really troubled about those things because we know that we are all watching and they are also watching. So we are good to go. Yeah.
Roland, can you show everyone what is on your T-shirt?
This is a T-shirt for the ELSA's Libertarianism project. So it's part of what we are still using to push out the ideas of libertarianism in Africa.
So I have a brief question to you. How would you pitch this particular protest to libertarians? What would you say from the very libertarian angle about these protests? Why, from the libertarian perspective, it is so important to be part of it? Why is that?
Basically, it's something that you must be, because like the panelists said earlier on, Japheth said, when a policy is made, or when there is an institution, is to respect human liberty and individual rights. Now, the anti-robbery squad of the Nigerian unit of the Nigerian police is actually meant to protect life and property. So when it becomes the opposite of violating human rights, then everybody must come up to defend your right. It's not just individual now, because everybody, we don't know who is next. It could be me today. I've had experiences with these guys several times. It's amazing that we've been stopped several times on the road, and it boils down to the same. So everybody must be on the platform. But for me, I feel one of the reasons I feel that this is the best time to share the idea of liberty is that this thing has come. Before when we are in UI, but promoting the ideas of liberty, people like, what, everybody must not have freedom. But now it's becoming clearer to them that your freedom doesn't even have to be you deciding what you want to do with your life, but you have to fight those policies that doesn't, respect your right as a person or your space as a person. For example, if I'm driving a car of 20 million and you want to investigate why there are different ways to go about it to know if it is legit or not. Instead of stopping me on the road and then, you are operating illegally, you go over people's houses, break through their doors, you take away things that start to go to people's houses, pick them up, take them to the ATM, and then take money from them. These are some of the narratives we have had over the years. Not just that, you can be shot at any time without, no proper investigation. And these are part of what we are saying, that now it is clear that you need to come up to defend your rights. So we are trying to engage our young people. We are trying to engage our fellow adults. Letting them understand that you don't have to, be part of an idea for you to understand how you feel. But you can still stay in your own space. Look at what is aimed for you. Why is this thing happening like this? Why do we have this problem of brutality? Okay. Why are we not safe? Why is it that the police are supposed to protect our lives and property? They are not there again, rather they are doing the opposite. So we have been trying to engage young people using this space right now to bring the reality of what is happening to them, like what is happening in society. We are bringing the reality, okay, this is what we have on the table. This is what it is all about. We have seen a lot of extrajudicial killing, excessive murder, like nobody care to know and all this. So for young Nigerians to come up on the streets to say, no, we don't want this again, enough is enough. You could see how bad it has been. You could see how it has eaten so deep in the system and in the society. So it's not just sitting down and then say, no, I don't care, I don't want to know. But it's like your brother could go out and doesn't come back. It has happened in River State where I am right now. A young boy was going to visit his sister, and he was stopped by the police. You know, out of the fear of harassment, he tried to run, and then he was shot just like that. Nobody. And this is a boy between the age of 19 to 20 was just killed like that, cold blood, and nobody could say anything. The police keep telling you that it was this reason that made them to happily trigger. I mean, these are some of the things we are saying. So even our parents now are going to.
I say this is an extremely brutal approach of police.
Yes, definitely. These are part of what we do.
Roland, thank you for your contribution. I want to open this to the floor now, meaning to our attendees, our wonderful attendees. Once again, I encourage you can send questions. Those of you who watch on Facebook, just write it in a comment section, and we will use these questions if time allows. And for you guys who watch on Zoom, there is this special button, ask question, and we're happy to get them. I got already some. I will start with the questions that I got from our wonderful friend, Marina Brearley. She's from United Kingdom. I am a good friend with her. She's a great freedom fighter. She loves Africa. She actually goes to Africa frequently. She did her master's studies at the University of Newcastle that were about private education as a very interesting solution for the question of general education in Africa and what the private education provides in comparison to the state education. Very interesting findings she brought. I'm just mentioning because I see she sent a lot of interesting questions. I want to start with this one. Extortion by figures in authority, especially the SARS, seems to be one of the greatest threats faced by peace-loving Nigerians. Increased prosperity for all could reduce the need for officials to blackmail to gain income. How can reformers best persuade those in authority that it is in their own long-term interests to be accountable to the people they profess to serve? Who want to take it? Ibrahim, perhaps, or JJ?
I really think that we can't afford to assume that, especially in Nigeria, where people often think that these leaders are not educated. They actually are well educated. They're Harvard, MIT, Stanford, and LSE, and Oxford folks in this system. And they understand that ultimately the common good, a situation where the government works for everyone rather than for a few, benefits them in the long run. But I really think that, you know, where you would have, for instance, kleptocracy, sometimes it looks like a disease. It looks like a disease where people actually know that this is what they're supposed to do, but they just refuse to do it. Because with Nigeria, I don't think people don't know what they're supposed to do. Why? When they come on TV, they say the right things, right? They say the right things. They say, this is what we're going to do. This is what we're committing to. Then they do the exact opposite. So it shows that it's not that these guys don't know what to do. They are just committed to a different way, which is unfortunate. But of course, like she said, it's always going to be important to continue to put the right ideas in place so that those that are coming after them will be able to see that there are options and there are alternatives to misgovernance and bad governance and big government. There are actually options to making the system work for everyone.
Yeah, I think JJ is right. And I also reckon with what the questionnaire said, particularly because there isn't really any option for any given society, but to constantly keep the government in check. There is no perfect democracy. Even the so-called perfect democracy that is the United States is undergoing a very serious crisis out of people questioning their government. And the best way to question a government or to make your opinion known to your government or elected representative is through election. That's the most constitutional way. And even election is giving America a problem now. But the problem is that in Nigeria, it's common knowledge that your voice cannot be heard through the ballot. The balloting process or the electoral process, of course, has been hijacked since the founding of the country itself. So people do not trust that their voices or opinion or grievances can be communicated through the ballot. And since that process is compromised, the other legitimate, I don't want to say legitimate, but the other very civic, very cool process of questioning or keeping government in check is through petitions. And ordinary citizen cannot really submit serious petitions to the Nigerian government. Even if you do, I've never heard about a situation. I don't know if JJ have heard about a situation where regular citizens will petition, their elected representative to perhaps address a problem in the community, and they will take it seriously. That process doesn't work in Nigeria. It's an African phenomenon, frankly. And of course, that means we have no other option but to go to protest. And that's why you've seen Africans in the street, and particularly in Nigeria recently, trying to keep their government in check through peaceful protests, which unfortunately was hijacked by hoodlums. And the other outstanding mode of keeping our government in check that I would like to reiterate, considering the nature of this gathering, is through the civil society. No democracy can survive or be in existence with accordance of the rule of law or the constituted customs without the civil society. And you do not necessarily have to belong to a think tank or be a strong lobbyist or a think tank or a human rights advocate or an attorney to contribute to the civil process, the civil society questioning process. You can do that through social media if you have a huge presence on social media. If you are an academic, you can do that through your lecturing and gathering. If you are if you are good at mobilization or creating awareness like Roland is, you do it through that. And I want to use the moment to salute our colleagues on the floor or in the field who are doing tremendous work by being the face of the whole protest. They are the real heroes, the folks that passed away unfortunately through the massacre in Lekki, and those that were able to survive. Those are the true heroes, and it brings the honors on us, individuals like us who have linked to think tanks or civil organizations to probe for this change, as the questionnaire said, to keep our government in check. There is no perfect democracy. If you have an imperfect one like we do have in Nigeria, we have no other option but to keep probing for change.
Thank you. I have another one from Marina, which is really interesting. It says, academic studies have found that systemic foreign aid worsens democratic institutions and makes leaders less accountable to their people, since they do not need to raise unpopular taxes to remain in power and enjoy large incomes. Authoritarian leaders use aid money to pay for armies and police who will support them and suppress opposition, as Nigeria appears to do. Should Western reformers try to stop their own governments giving large-scale foreign aid routinely to African states? ? Excluding direct aid for specific humanitarian projects. That was in the brackets. What do you think? Do you believe that the Western government should just stop giving aid, or that's not the way to go?
I think that's the way to go. And interestingly, with Nigeria's dependence on aid actually continues to reduce through the years. And also with the reduction in oil prices, with the trend in the reduction in oil prices since 2014, the government has actually, especially subnational governments, have actually been looking out for other avenues to raise their revenue, trying to expand the economy. They've not done so well with that. But I agree completely with what the person said, that as long as governments are able to run governments without their people paying taxes, as long as they can access aid, as long as they can access income from commodities like oil, people's voices and ability to be represented would not be as strong as it would be if they were actually paying taxes. And I also agree generally that aid disrupts the economic system. It disrupts the people's ability to create wealth for themselves, and it puts a lot of power on oftentimes oppressive governments and leaders.
Yeah, I mean, I completely agree with JJ. I mean, he puts it right. Aid disrupts the economy. I mean, in Africa's case, such fragile economies can easily be disrupted by sudden input of monies when you're trying to give your small and medium enterprises, your local farmers, the opportunity to grow. Say, for instance, you have a local farmer in saying trying to grow cassava, right? And in the same community, there's been a recent famine, or there has been a problem, economic problem. Now you have aids from USAID coming into the saying, giving the people free food and stuff. Of course, those are noble things to do, but in the process, you are killing that farmer in the saying who's trying to invest in cassava business, right? So aid has many ways of affecting economics negatively. I think Dambisa Moyo rightly put it in a book, Dead Aid. And of course, William Esseley of NYU, they've done really tremendous research about development aid in Africa. And the other thing I would say is that, of course, we cannot rule out the necessity of humanitarian aid. I mean, I can't imagine if we have the opportunity of giving help to folks affected by Boko Haram insurgency in Northeast, and because we are so concerned about the economic consequences, we would deprive those people of the aid they need. I agree with humanitarian aid, but I do not agree with humanitarian aid or financial aid or whatever aid going into the hands of the government directly, particularly because governments in Africa are so notorious when it comes to utilizing aid as a political tool. I wrote a piece for the Foundation for Economic Education, I think 2 years ago, about how the Somali government have used foreign aid to oppress its own people. You have USAID or the European Union giving money and food to the Somalia government that came to power through militia, and they're gonna use those food to oppress the people that they've always been traditionally oppressing. So I would say, donors, aid is not really bad in entirety, but if you want to give help to a people, work with the NGOs, not with the government, who often corrupt the process or use it to foster their authoritarian agenda. And just generally, we need to be very strategic with aid, not killing the economic prospects in that process, but helping the people strategically and giving local SMEs, startups, the avenue to compete, because you can't compete with free stuff, frankly. But
right.
When you do it strategically, there could be some form of competition, and of course, competition drives economic progress.
Yeah, definitely, and very important words being said. Roland, do you want to add something?
Yeah, I think like Gigi has said and Anoba has said earlier on, we have a clear case of what the negative impact of foreign aid in Nigeria. When you come to the Niger Delta, where we have the oil spillage, there has been a kind of when the foreign aid comes from the big oil companies and all that. You see, government it goes into the wrong hands. Government uses the platform to plan for the next political agenda, which is equipping themselves with tools to oppress the people and then take a very forceful agenda on the ruling the poor. So foreign aid, to me, I've always never agreed that foreign aid should go into the hand of government, because it becomes a tool to oppress the poor and the same people who need the aid. So I've had a clear case of that. Be somebody that have been in the platform on the Niger Delta region on the environmental pollution that happened a few years back, and we have not seen any changes with all the foreign aid and all that. There was a time that the Shell oil company released a sum of $20 million for some projects in the region. And during the platform, when the former Minister of Environment, she made a comment about the policies of the government in terms of what funds are supposed to be used for. So you could see that foreign aid comes only into the hands of the rich, who are the political gladiators, and these monies are used for personal interests and some of our political agenda. So I've never also supported foreign aid going into the cost of the government, being that I've had experiences from my region.
Thank you, Roland. I want to say that this is really, really important issue, and I want to make an advertisement for our friends from Acton Institute. They made tremendous work by not only talking about this through the conferences, that's for sure, but they made two really important movies. I want to advertise them. One is called Poverty Inc., that is Poverty Incorporated, and it's an amazing film that shows how this big business and big NGOs and big government, most of all, together do this aid programs and how much they hurt poor countries and developing countries, societies. Really great. And also Poverty Cure, that's entire series of videos they produced. Also really, really worthy stuff. I do recommend. Okay, we have another question. This is coming from William on Facebook. William asks, how useful would it be to increase awareness of NSARS among the United States audience concerned with police brutality in the United States? Question mark.
Interestingly, NSAS was amongst the most popular conversations on social media when it happened. There was a lot of support from Black Lives Matter, from cultural leaders in America, people like Hillary Clinton, people like the UK people in the UK Parliament, one of the US government, the Secretary of State Pompeo, the President-elect Joe Biden. It was quite a big conversation. It was quite a big conversation. And I also know that there's been reactions, official reactions, saying things along the lines of they'll be paying attention to what happens with the panels of inquiry that has been set up, and they will take action according to what the government does. So awareness definitely, I mean, you can never have too much awareness, but in terms of awareness, I think that NSAS definitely has been around the world.
Yeah, and just to add to that, I would just say, I mean, as I said earlier, we've seen a tremendous amount or degree of interconnection between NSARS, Black Lives Matter, or the human rights protests in Cameroon and in Ethiopia, everywhere across Black Africa or Black diaspora. And I would say we really cannot do too much because the spontaneous order, the spontaneous order, frankly, has really created the interconnection, primarily through entertainment, through music, and through movies and urban culture. It's so interconnected, so much that we really can't do too much to integrate our realities with the Black African reality in the United States. I mean, before, in situations like this, I reckon if it was 1950 or 1945 or before the 20th century, and something of such is happening in Africa or among the African diaspora, individuals like Nkrumah or the Boys or Henry Sylvester Williams, we just organize a Pan-African Congress. But now we really do not need to organize any Pan-African Congress to create that interconnection between Africans everywhere. Social media, entertainment has really helped us create that connection. So that's why you easily find individuals protesting, George Floyd murder in Abuja and Lagos. It was on the news. And that's why you also see African Americans joining NSARS protest in Washington, D.C. So I think the process has really connected itself. And frankly, it's a beauty to watch the degree of interconnection. And yeah.
Thank you. Thank you so much. It's already 72 minutes of our meeting, so we are really approaching the end of today's conversation about the crisis in Nigeria, police brutality and human rights abuse. I learned a lot myself. Especially the things you said now about this interconnectivity, how American side, people protesting America support the ones in Nigeria and vice versa. Not only that, also things really connected to SARS. I learned a lot. I believe our attendees, people also who will watch it later, because this will be on YouTube, on Facebook, we all learned a lot. So thank you very, very much. I say to all three of you, Ibrahim, JJ, and Roland, great job. Thank you for your time, because this is always precious time, and you dedicated it for us here at Liberty International for this Zoom conversation. It was great. Thank you, the audience, for your time, for the questions, and for your interest in Nigeria. I hope personally that the world is. I'm optimistic that the world is changing to better. I mean, not everyone understands economics. Not everyone understands individual rights as libertarians see them, but still people care about freedom. They may not have the same definition of it, but they care about essential freedom. And when they see the heavy stick of government over their head, something rings in their brains that this is not right. I mean, they don't tread on me, right? Don't tread on me, get out of here. I can rule myself. They still often want government to deliver this, to deliver that, but the government cannot do what they are pleased to do, what they want to do. And this is a good sign. I hope 2020 is crazy, but hopefully 2021 and the following years, we will see different Nigeria. We will see different Belarus. We will see different, what else? There's many countries that need it. China, maybe, hopefully. This is something we fight for at Liberty International. And if we can be the signalists, if we can be this lights of freedom, these guys see from the distance and grab it and make something big out of it, that would be wonderful. This is why we exist. And I want to recommend everyone watch this and your friends to go to our website, liberty-intl.org. This is Liberty International's main website. We have also social media channels. The most alive is Facebook. You just type Liberty International on Facebook. You find us there. This is also being streamed on Facebook. We are also present on Twitter and since very recently on Instagram. So follow Liberty International if you can, if you are able to, because times are tough. Donate to Liberty International and fight for freedom with us. And hopefully we wake up soon in a better, freer world. Thank you guys very much. Thank you, Mandy, our administrator. And I hope to see most of you again next month, perhaps for another Zoom call, which will be announced soon. The topic, the conversation, but this will be very international stuff again. Thank you. Have a either wonderful day or good night. Depends where you are.
Thank you. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Omojuwa. Thank you, Anoba, for your time. I appreciate it.
Roland, Ibrahim, cheers, guys.
Cheers.